Danica Lorer, and this is Lit Happens, your celebration of the literary arts here in Saskatchewan. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Brian James Hildebrand. Now, Brian is the author and publisher of 3 books for young people. Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Brian, you've got a new series on the go. You've got 2 books out to talk to us about today. Do you want to start by just reading a little bit of book 1?
Sure. I can do that. I guess that it needs a little bit of context first. This series of mine, The Renegades, is a superhero series where my main characters aren't the right kinds of heroes and have gotten in trouble for that. And this passage explains that in some good detail. I'd gotten pretty much the worst prize that anyone in the world could get from the Hero Society. Cliff Notes version, I was a teenage prodigy. Still am, I guess, since I'm only 17. I invented some nanotechnology that was in a league of its own. I hadn't done anything with my tech, just shown the world that it existed, that I could build it. And it was so powerful that the society feared me. 3 years ago, they literally came to my doorstep and told me I had to sign over my tech to a science firm they approved of, or it would be labeled a threat to global security and I would be locked away. I agreed, worked for their science firm. 3 years being one of the best paid scientists in the world, and all it cost was any level of privacy. They told me that with a brain like mine that I needed bodyguards, but it felt more like having a constant babysitter. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere without a bodyguard present, and I mean anywhere. One of my guards was always female so that I wouldn't have to go to the bathroom alone, all to make sure my tech never fell into the wrong hands, which were apparently my own, because after I started designing plans to use it to create a battle suit similar to the one used by Steel Soldier of the Hero Society, they asked me if I was planning on using the suit to become a hero myself. I said no. His plans were to help military forces and such by giving all soldiers the ability to fight against powered people. The Hero Society didn't like that, because those hypocrites hate the idea of any kind of power being mass-produced and available to the world. They pulled me off the project, stopped me from working on my own invention. Well, they tried to. I continued doing the research on my own, stole back my files. Within an hour of doing that, I found myself arrested as a threat to global security and thrown in a jail cell. All because I wanted to be a scientist, not a hero. If anyone had a just reason to hate the society, it was me.
Wow, things that we love, science and heroes. So do you have a background in science? Do you have an affinity for science or a love of science?
I certainly have a love of it, even though I never got into it education-wise. I was drawn more to the stories than the science, but yes, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Bill Nye the Science Guy. Just finished binge-watching his latest show, Bill Nye Saves the World, in fact. So I love that, and I just love the superhero genre as a whole. I mean, that passage made it seem very tech-focused, but the series is very much a fantasy kitchen sink, which means everything is in there. One of my heroes has magic, one of them is a robot, one of them is an angel, one of them is a mutant who can make earthquakes. So it's kind of a mishmash of all of it put together like you see when you look at the DC and Marvel comics. I kind of wanted to make something along those lines.
Well, and it's always interesting when you have the group of heroes, and some have natural-born strange abilities, and some of them are something they can make with their intellect, or something that they can buy if they have the money. So so it's always fun to see who's brought together to make up a group of heroes. And so, do the heroes, are they successful heroes? That you've said they're a little bit different than who you would expect to be heroes.
Well, for one reason or another, they're all considered criminals, and they're working together. They're trying to do the right thing, trying to be heroes, but they're living in a world that's not making that easy for them. I mean, one of them was forced into the supervillain gang his parents were in when he was younger, and so he's struggling to try and transition into doing the right thing. And other characters just have had bad circumstances happen to them. Like, one of them just comes across a mystical book of dark magic, and it's assumed he's going to become evil just because he's in possession of this book. And so it's a story not just about heroes, but about how things aren't always black and white, that there's a huge gray area, and that sometimes the greatest crime a person can commit is assuming that if you're not fully good, that you must be evil.
And I suppose the characters learn that about themselves as the book progresses.
Absolutely, none more so than the main character, who was a sidekick working for the Hero Society, as was mentioned in my clip, for 6 years or so, and she really struggles with the idea that the rest of them might not be bad, and that's her struggle for the entire first book.
And the characters are young, so they've been dealt this hand as children almost, and had to grow up into this intellect or sharing or science and technology and hero work.
Yes, they've definitely all had to grow up in it in various ways, some of them even being freshly born, because one of my characters is a robot who just gains his sentience within the pages of the book and is coming to grips with even, being able to think for himself.
And the characters are both male and female.
Yes, and some that are neither. The angel character on the front cover, Zafon, is specifically androgynous and has no gender, and characters throughout the book refer to Zafon as both he and she, depending on what their perception of the character is.
So that sort of opens it up to an audience that is broader than just boys wanting to read it or girls wanting to read it or gender nonconforming young people wanting to read it. You've widened your audience in a special way that way.
Absolutely, and like book one in the series, each one of the 6 characters on the front gets several chapters where they are the person telling the story, and as the series progresses, each of them is going to get books of their own where this time it's my story. The second book there has Claire the Sparrow on the front, so that one is her story as she's coming to grips with no longer being a sidekick and having to deal with the fact that her identity became public knowledge, and she's kind of getting hunted for that in book 2.
And so the series is how long? How many books do you envision for the series?
I'm kind of envisioning doing what comic books themselves, which are the main medium of superheroes, do, and just keep going for a while. I have a plan for how I would want it to end, but I also have plans for the series to go 70, 80 books.
Wow.
It's kind of, in that way, it's a little inspired by my favorite series when I was growing up, the Animorphs book series. That book series went for 54 books, releasing one book a month for 4.5 years.
Wow.
In a perfect world, I would like to be able to do that, but I know that series was ghost-written a fair bit, so I'm thinking at best 4 to 6 a year if I can start getting on the ball.
Well, and that's very quick anyways, so I applaud that. That's very a lofty goal, but also once the series takes off, maybe you'll have to hire some ghostwriters, and then you can just sort of pass on the torch a little bit.
Maybe, but I'd honestly hope not. I'd rather write the stories myself. At least that's how I'm feeling at this point.
Excellent. And so you have 2 that are published. How many more are in the pipes right now?
Book 3 is done its first draft, and I'm working on editing it. Book 4 is technically done a first draft, but it's not as good, so I need to make some edits and refinement to it. And Book 5 has had its first draft started, because I tend to do these for NaNoWriMo every year, and NaNoWriMo, as you probably know, is writing 50,000 words in 1 month, and these books tend to be 25 to 30,000 words, so I get 2, sometimes part of a third, written in one NaNoWriMo, and then I just spend the next year or so working on refining those.
Well, that's a really interesting process, and it sounds like a fantastic series. I can't wait to read a few pages, and I know we can pick them up at McNally. And where are some of the other places you can find them?
Currently it is at McNally and Indigo. The first book is also on Amazon and at the library. Actually, Right now, the first book is the only one at any of those places. The second book will hopefully be there by the time this hits the air, but the second book's only been out for 10 days or so. That's how long I've had copies, and I haven't gotten it everywhere yet.
Well, thanks so much, Brian. It's been a pleasure to talk to you today. That was Brian James Hildebrand with his Renegades series. I'm Danica Lorer, and this is Lit Happens. You can find past episodes by going to Shaw TV's Saskatoon's YouTube channel. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter, or you can contact me at danicalorer@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.